Hello, and welcome to the Starlit Stories podcast. It's me, Stella Marie, and in this podcast, we're going to go into witchcraft, magic, and the rare story of a man called Elwyn who was born into witchcraft. It's rare because I don't actually know many people at all born into this world. It's usually found later in life, but Elwyn has his own story. And here is a little bit about Elwyn, taken from his website. He's a generational hedge witch from England who does bone casting, tarot readings, spiritual consultations, spell work, and custom sigils. He was born with the gift of clairvoyance and has the ability to see different threads or paths in your life, as well as ancestors, deities, and spirit guides. So Elwyn is a particular type of witch, and this is also taken off of his website. He is a hedge witch. It's a solitary practitioner in the old methods of magic, often referred to as folk magic. Knowledge of herbs, the natural world, and how they may interact with the ethereal world around them is essential. The hedge is an ancient boundary that can be thousands of years old and is representative of a symbolic barrier between worlds. It is also a place where the many different medicinal and magical herbs reside. The job of the hedge witch is to be able to hedge fly, to astral travel to other realms in order to find information and guidance for those who seek it, to exist with a foot in both worlds and live in the balance of an immortal spirit within a mortal body, and to expand the possibilities of both aspects to their full potential. So, let's dive in to this conversation with Elwyn, reconnect a little bit more, returning to ancient knowing, and returning to the earth once more. Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Starlit Stories podcast. Today I have got Elwyn, or you might know him as the Antlered Crown on social media. And hey man, how's it going? It's been nice it's a lovely day here. It's been a nice weekend. We just had a little chat about our weekend, and yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. It's a good day. It's a lovely day here as well. It's quite nice being back in the UK as well. Winters aren't as bad from living in America. Lived in the Midwest for a while, and you get spring for 2 weeks. That's it. So it's quite nice to see spring fully.
Yeah. So where are you now then?
Northern Ireland.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And there's no reason. I've got no family here. We just decided that's where we're going to go, and so we did.
Nice. Just following your heart, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's a
yeah.
beautiful place to be. The Emerald Isle, I bet it's very, very green.
It's incredibly green. It rains a lot, but it is lovely. It really is. And the sea, like I'm really close to the sea. I've seen dolphins and the castles that they build on top of the cliffs, like remarkable places. It really is a wonderful place. It's great inspiration as well for
Mm.
things. It's wonderful inspiration for things. So yeah, no, it is lovely here. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I in the introduction to this video, I would have gone into who Elwyn is and what we're going to be talking about. But if you'd like to just give a brief little introduction as to who you are in the context of being a witch and sharing that side of yourself online.
Certainly. So Elwyn, or Elwyn the Witch, as this is it's my name's been coined. In truth, I think I kind of found myself in social media some years back, and it was a very nerve-wracking thing for me because I was always told that we don't broadcast who we are and what we do. However, that was a long time ago. That was the way I was raised. And I decided maybe it's time for a change because I had single-handedly watched basically my own aunts who raised me, less and less people, they were working witches, and so all their lives, and yet the problem with that is newer generations grow up, people don't talk about you, and then because people don't talk about you, less people started coming to see them and things like this. And so I thought to myself, well, I was raised basically to do this, and yet there's, we no longer live in our village. What do I do? And I thought, well, let's go online. Let's go online and put myself out there. And it was because it went against everything I was ever told, but I did. And funnily enough, I found so many other people in the witchcraft community, and it was very accepting. It was wonderful, and people are very kind, and it was lovely. And so that's kind of how this started, really, for me. This was something that, I rebelled I rebelled from a young age against witchcraft, because I was told that's what I'm going to do. I was told, this is what you do, this is what we do, and we taught you to do it. And there was always this knowing sense from my aunt that, no, that's what you'll do. And I was like, no, I won't. No, that's what you're going to do. No, I won't. And I did many other things over the years, especially in my early 20s. And I thought that was it. I left it behind. I moved to America. I married my wife. We had kids, and I lived in America. And all of a sudden, it all came flooding back, everything, and being online, and it just, I found my practice again. I picked it up where I left off, and I remember my aunt saying, "I told you, I told you you would." I was like, "Yeah, I know." So that's who I am, and I try to be. It's very difficult being in social media. It's very difficult trying to be sincere and showing all of yourself, everything, in this way, because a lot of the times it feels like you split yourself in two. You have responsibilities to different things, but then you have family life, you have my own practice, for instance. And because of what I do, what people don't talk about is how I feel that they don't talk about it much, because it's one of those things that your practice and then your practice via social media, and although they are linked, they can create this rift almost, where you have work, almost this thing that you want to share with others, but you have to go extra lengths to share it. You have to remember to record and do things. And in social media, you're always trying to make things engaging. You have to make sure it's engaging. You have to make sure it has an aesthetic to it that's pleasing, so it captures people and draws them in. And so a lot of that time you spend doing that, you kind of then have to remember, I was actually doing something, sort of thing.
What was the intention and reason before social media even became a part of this practice? I can completely relate. And I was on a podcast actually on Friday, and we were talking about this, how we have many masks, and it's okay to, and on social media people perceive us as perhaps this one mask. And I was saying how the mask that I portray, my creative spiritual essence on social media that I'm choosing to use my social media for right now, is very different to the Stella that's making scrambled eggs for my son in the morning. And that is just as nourishing and sacred, and a practice that is just as important to me as perhaps the ones that people are on my page for. And I've actually had a little break from Instagram this past week to really come back to my practice and what I'm doing and why, because social media can really it can tell us where to go, and it's the balance. It's hard, isn't it?
It can be very hard. Yeah, it can be. I completely agree that taking a step back sometimes. I do that on TikTok, especially, is one of those things that you get, especially within witchcraft communities. There can be, because TikTok is so quick and engaging, a lot of the times people will just simply take what someone says, and you'll make a simple innocent video, and it can spark all manner of comments about, and people arguing, and then people defending you for something, and you haven't even known. You're like, what's going on? And sometimes I have to just take a step. I'm like, I can't do this right now. I was just trying to make something that would hopefully inspire people,
Yes.
help people in some way, And sometimes a friend of mine who I used to work with years ago, he used to say, I won't swear, but he used to say, other effing people. He was from Birmingham, but he used to say, he said the world would be perfect if it weren't for other effing people, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And he used to say that was his catchphrase. But you can sometimes you can understand that you make something and it's simple but people look too much into things sometimes online. And I once had someone get in touch with me because they they felt that I was talking directly to them. You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm not. I'm simply like, in a sense that if there's something, then take from it. That's what it's there for. Oftentimes I'll make a video about something and I'm not sure why, but then I post it and many people are like, that I'm going through this right now, and I'm like, that's probably why I did it. And yet they were adamant that I am talking directly to them. So I didn't even know you existed until you messaged me. It's impossible. How can I? But it's those moments there where people put their own agency into such things in social media. I think we have to keep pulling away from that, and because then, as you say, we do it as well. The person I am, I'm exactly the same, making breakfast, getting the kids off to school, doing things, stubbing my toe and then effing and blinding, jumping about the house in my pajamas in the morning, tripping over the cat, the normal things, that a lot of people don't see, but it's important because that's us, that's us as well. And but I think we all have that. There are times where I don't feel like doing witchcraft or stuff like this. So what I do is I will go for a walk in nature, or I will, sound silly, but I will wear something that feels, I hate the word, but witchy, because it puts you in that perspective. It puts you in that mindset and prepares you. And you're like, right, I feel better now. It's the same as like when you're in a bad mood or something, you have a haircut and it makes you feel better, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's hugely important for everyone, really, in their practice, to kind of change those things up.
Like magical armor a bit, isn't it? Magical, like our clothing can be magical armor, and we use Instagram as a platform to express the clothing that we do love. And as you've said, it is different to our normal kind of non-witchy day-to-day lives. And this jacket actually is, so I used to wear clothes like this when I was a teenager. And since I've become a mum myself, I started noticing myself get a bit normal mum. I've got to go to playgroup and stuff, and I thought I've got to be a bit more normal now. And then I was like, no. Let's go back to a time when you felt really empowered and really fun and really joyful. So I asked for this jacket for Christmas from a Ruby Sparrow who makes handmade clothes in the UK. And I chose to have this to embody that young, youthful, joyful energy that I had. So
I love it. It's a great pattern. It's really nice pattern.
Yeah, Ruby, she makes amazing, it's all feminine clothing though, but she makes amazing clothes. But yeah, like it is important for people to know, because people are probably on this podcast listening to us because they found us through our social medias, that yeah, like as creators, I've been told I have a responsibility, and I do feel that, but I feel because we are within, like in our own lives, we are very conscious and aware of how the magical workings of the world work within nature and the community. So we're always pushing that through our content and being aware of the pots we are stirring. It's like we're creating, we've got a cauldron that we're putting our concepts and thoughts and ideas and parts of ourselves into. But we have a similar intention, which is actually to reunite people with each other and the natural world. But through that, there is going to be controversy, and there is going to be confusion and judgment and all of that stuff. And yeah, it's just for anyone listening, the comment section can really pull parts out of you that you didn't intend to show on social media. Like when you open your phone up, you don't intend to do anything really. And I think it's important to be intentional on social media. And if you guys are intending and choosing to come on our platforms, like, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
It's important to know where you're looking. And talking about social media, I wanted to ask you about your username on Instagram and TikTok, which is the Antlered Crown. So
Yeah.
to just divert a little bit from that, what does the Antlered Crown mean, and where did that name come from?
Well, the Antlered Crown is, in a sense of what it means, it's from a very young age. I encountered spirits. Now, unlike my aunts, who were left a bit stumped because the spirits that I were encountering from a young age were not necessarily what we consider to be the honored dead. They were others, or the other, if you like, in some way. They weren't entirely human in form. And one spirit, I'll never forget it. It's happened now 3 times in my life. And I was out and I was walking through the forest with my aunt, and I was quite young, where I saw ahead of me this image of this. It's like a deer, but it wasn't really a deer. Think more like an elk. A huge thing. It was silvery white, and it was massive, and it was sniffing and pulling leaves off of the lower branch of the trees, and it regarded me, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified. But as it regarded me, it looked at me, and it felt like I had melted. It's the only way I can explain it. As though I was conscious that I was standing out. But then it looked at me, and it looked at me almost as though I was a tree stump. Yeah, I wasn't even there in that way. It was just, and as quick as it was there, then all of a sudden it just melted away. It was gone. It was such a powerful image, and I remember it so vividly. Well, many years later, I am meditating, and as I meditate, there is this very deep, low, resonant voice that's getting closer and closer. And once again, here we have this form of antlers, similar, but this time it has the form of a man. And there are many different depictions of this horned or antlered man in witchcraft. Some people Kernonos or Cernonos, Hern, we have the cave painting of the shaman or shaman in this way. We even have the devil, this fella here, with his stang and stuff. He's actually a culmination, an artist made of all different forms. You have like the Baphomet with the hand gestures.
Could we see him?
Yeah, I can show him. He's got his bits hanging out, so I apologize for that. But you see, he's got the goat legs like a fawn, but he's got the antlers. He's got the stang, the witch's stang, which is also a spear. So the hunter and the hunted, the serpent and the talk of Kernonos, and the hand gesture of Baphomet. He's the culmination of much. And in folk magic, you could call him the Lord of Witches, if you like, or the Old One. In Christianized folklore, it's called the devil. However, the devil isn't the devil in a biblical sense. He's not a lord of hell. He's form of nature,
Yeah.
And it seemed very clear that all of a sudden, throughout my whole life, and from many spirits and things, there was always this guiding force wherever I went, what led me back to this image. And I refer to him as the Old One, because there are so many names, and I don't actually see him as a deity. I see him similar to what you may call the sproul, the serpentine energy of the earth, or the winds. There's no defining form You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because it seems to pop up throughout humanity all over the world through our consciousness in a very similar way. So, I don't know if you've seen Studio Ghibli
Oh
films.
yes, I love it.
So Princess Mononoke, at the
Yeah,
end of that film, you've got the spirit of the forest, which is this deer,
yeah,
and Hayao Miyazaki, that created Studio Ghibli actually spent some time in Wales. And a lot of his work was inspired by like the coal mining here, and different things, and the landscape here. But there's here in Wales, we've also got, we don't have like a specific Greek, like, I don't know if you know much about the Welsh mythology, but we've got Gwyn ap Nudd and Arawn. We've got different
right.
leaders or gods or kings of the other world, but
Yeah,
they bring forward this image as well with
mm,
the deer head. And as I was watching Princess Mononoke, as I was older, I was like, wow, in Japan, they also have this
yeah,
character of another world that's a protector of the forest, a protector of the hunt, ruthless as well, because the natural world is
yeah.
ruthless. And it just seems to be, yeah, it seems to be everywhere. So that's interesting that it's spoken to you a lot throughout your life. For me, I haven't had any interactions with it as a deity or an archetype other than kind of noticing it.
Mm.
I haven't had that personal connection, but that must be quite warming and love, and like you feel how does that feel having that presence, and how has that moved your practice and things? It must be quite a
It's
profound relationship.
it really has actually. It's the Antlered Crown is kind of made in dedication to this, which is a friend of mine actually made. This is the symbol of the Antlered Crown there.
Mm.
And there were certain things that I wanted in the logo, you know, but the particularly the deer and the serpent, because I feel that I'm not going to try and put that back on the wall because it would take me ages. But it's this underlining sense of I was never raised. I was because I was raised by my aunt. There was no underlining form of kind of monotheistic religion. Um, However, from what I know of it, it's I believe a lot of like what we consider to be Christianity is almost evolved to be subconsciously directed at stopping you from becoming a witch. Now that seems like quite a conspiracy theory. As I said, it's subconsciously created. It's not, I don't think, but the idea of what we consider to be our sinful behavior is what in folk witchcraft you may consider to be the fetch self, the animalistic self, the
Mm.
wild self. And this guy kind of represents this. He represents that there is this sense of shame that we are given from a young age. We are taught shame. We are taught self consciousness. We
Mm.
are taught that we must not be too smug or confident in our own abilities. And it can leave us, where what was the saying that say the meek shall inherit the earth in such ways like this. But it perpetuates this manner of which that we could live by, which goes against everything that witchcraft has always been, where witchcraft is being about being rather outspoken and being stuck to what you believe because you feel it, not because someone has told you.
Yes.
It always goes against the grain. The witch, even if a witch is respected, the witch was on the outskirts of society. There was an equal amount of fear and respect for the witch because the witch is an unknown entity. They're the one who says no when everyone else says yes. You know what I mean? And for me, he kind of represents that as well.
Mm.
I say he's not even a he in that sense, but I think
No, because it's got a very feminine, earth-based, wild energy, isn't it, really? And yeah, with the t touching on the Christianity and I agree with that subconscious kind of intention there to pull us away from the wild self, the feminine self, but that feminine needs a masculine counterpart. And it's all a sovereignty. It's the sovereign self, really, isn't it? Because the
Yeah.
feminine is wild and sovereign, like the earth is free and flowing, and so is that character there. And I think the hunter comes along with it because the hunter is going out there and choosing. They're making that decision. They know the wild. Like the hunter understands how the forest works deeply. And
Yes.
a lot of these Abrahamic religions, because of that connection is so profound and so obvious when you spend time with the natural world. The Abrahamic religions, like obviously have known that for a long time and can see how easy it is for us to, as soon as we look away from that church, and we really pay attention to what's happening,
Yeah.
it's easy to get lost, which is why there's so much of a yeah, so many chains around us. And I think like as hard as like it's like they try, our world is built to really put us in boxes and to disconnect us from it. Some of us, like yourself, um, who are born into a family where they have actively stopped those boxes, from being built around you, even though you did rebel as a teen, like we all do.
Yeah.
Um, the connection with this entity or deity was more profound because of you weren't kind of formed in the box
Mm.
that the world has put around us, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
there's
I think that's also from a fairly young age. I'd say I was probably 18, 17, 18. I discovered a deity that you will know, Cerridwen.
mm,
And I have always had a fascination for Cerridwen. Like above all other goddesses, there's always been this fascination for Cerridwen. Um, and I think it's because I recognize something similar with this one. There is this sense of love and nurture, but also there is this huge amount of rage and protection and this tempest. It's a storm. She's like a storm and she creates change. No one is ever going to be ready for change. And she is almost like the grey clouds on the horizon in a sense. She's like, oh, something's coming. And it's,
mm,
there's no preparing for this. And the story of, Cerridwen and Taliesin and that sense of the pursuit. She is always the predator in pursuit of this, and it's that sheer rage that instigates change and births legend. I've always found fascinating. Also, I have an obsession with cauldrons. Every time I see every time I see a cauldron, I'm like, I have to have it. I have a thing about them. I can't help it.
mm,
So that doesn't help either. But it is that I think there are deities that a lot of people gravitate towards, but I think it's also because of the individual as well. A lot of the times people tell me, they come to me and they say, like, I would like to work with a deity, but I'm unsure what one. And
mm,
I'm very honest. And I say, listen, treat a deity like you're going shopping for shoes. If you are drawn to a deity and you like the stories, the teachings, the mythology, you like the way they look, try them on. Try them on. If something doesn't work, put them back. There is no point working with a deity if the deity isn't going to fit for you either. There's no point. So, you know, I think people have this idea of this high reverence and this groveling in this sense, and yet in witchcraft we worship ourselves. That's where we give ourselves power by doing this.
yeah,
That idea that I am the everything, as within, so without, as above, so below. I am everything I perceive, and everything that perceives me is I. And so, um, I people are quite shocked, I think, sometimes to hear that because they expect me to be like, oh well, what you need to do is and it's like, no, just go and research and
mm.
just be honest about what is you're drawn to,
Yeah, it's definitely a process because I get asked questions a lot because we've got these numbers on our social media. I think people think we've got answers to like we can educate on the things that we know about, but we can't educate anyone on their path and
their
the
path.
amount we can repeat a million times to someone, you
Yeah,
are the one that knows what you need, but it's a process of them like having to ask us and then trying the shoes on, and then over time you realize, you wake up one day like, oh right, it was all me anyway. Like,
yeah,
oh, that guy was right. The guru's within me. I didn't need to go outside, but it does take, you have to move through that, asking questions and looking outside of yourself to finally be like, oh, right, it's me.
Yeah.
Wow, it's all me. And the connection that you have to a deity will be different to the connection that I have. So where with Cerridwen, I found her. So I was very much in the New Age spiritual world, and I felt like I had to leave this country and I had to go elsewhere to find these guides because there was I was going through an awakening, and I'm not born into a family that know about it. So I was like, I've got to escape. I'm stuck here. There's nothing here. And then I started spending a lot more time in nature, and then obviously being like, oh, okay, the spirits of the natural world are here, but there's no like specific person. And then I was like, oh, I could connect to deities, and I found Cerridwen. And then I found out that Cerridwen wasn't an ancient deity in the past, but today she is. And I've gone through a lot of, like, with my spiritual path, it's like I find something out and I feel like I need to know it. And then it gets like shaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ego gets shaken like constantly over and over and over and over again. And it's just brought me to realize with Cerridwen, for example, when I found out that she wasn't actually an ancient goddess that was honored as a goddess by the
Yeah.
Welsh people, I was like, that doesn't mean that I can connect to her archetype from the story that she's from
Yeah.
as a goddess or that deity. And I do speak about this on my channel a lot, the misconceptions, because for people who want to know the true history, I think it is important to know that she wasn't worshipped as a goddess in the past, but there's a reason that so many people today are connecting to her story. And it's like, why today are we connecting to her? What is she there for today?
Yeah.
You know?
I
Yeah.
think she kind of represents an uncomfortable truth, in a way, because that's, I think it was, what's his name? Roger Horn, the author of Folk Witchcraft and such. I remember in one of his books, he says, if in witchcraft, in your own spiritual journey, if you are relaxed, if you are comfortable, then you're not doing it right. You always have to confront yourself with new truths and new concepts that may unnerve you and shake the very foundation of what you thought you were standing on. But that's important. And it's as you said, the same with in that the ego takes a bump. It all of a sudden like, oh, and that's the thing. Like, so many people now, they use different. I mean, it's in the same way of, we have there are saints. People use saints, and yet when it comes down to regarding saints and things like that, it's very much the same. That a lot of them, they're not ancient, but they're a solution to a problem that once existed. Is that, who the hell do I pray to if my sheep get lost? And they're like, well, you pray to God. And it's like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of these people are, they're like, that doesn't make sense. So, okay, well, you pray to this guy then, okay? And he, but he's part of the same thing. It's like a branch almost, And sorry about the dog barking.
It's all right.
It's a postman. Yeah. So no, I know what you mean. Is that constantly kind of getting into kind of deeper water and being like, oh, and then you go down a rabbit hole, and what you find isn't always. I mean, look, for instance, the one of the huge contributions I think for folk magic is the Confessions of Isabel Gowdy, Scottish self-proclaimed witch, at least under interrogation, and she was found, and tried for witchcraft, and yet what she was saying during her interrogation is what we consider to be true folk practice now, and yet if that wasn't the case, if this terrible things that happened to this poor woman, we wouldn't have a lot of the stuff, the a lot of the chance for skin turning, the chance for spirit flight and stuff like that, they actually come from things that she would repeat under interrogation, that she would use as chants and things during, like, spirit flight, witch flight, or if you like, So it's sometimes where we get a lot of these things from. That when you look into them, you're like, oh wow, there's oftentimes one of the things I think was the have you heard of the Queen of Elfame? The Queen of Elfame is in a lot of Scottish cunning arts. The Queen of Elfame is basically a form of fairy queen, queen of the
Yes, yeah,
underworld, you
yeah.
know, and yet she's actually comes from Shakespeare. The Queen of Elfame is where it's first coined, and yet so it's not old. It's not. She's not ancient, and yet during such times with Isabel Gowdy as well, like the mention of the Queen of Elfame has become this thing now where many people will actually hold space on their altar spaces and stuff for the Queen of Elfame because it's the representation. And I think when we get bogged down in the names, but when something is a formless entity that we give form to, really, in this way, the name can change many times, the face can change many times, but what it actually is, its nature always remains. And so I think people focus on the name a lot, focus on the identity of something.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, especially with witchcraft within the online communities, because we give ourselves a name, and me and my friend Victoria talk about this a lot. We how do we market ourselves? Because it is marketing, and that is a way to get the message in across. But marketing itself puts you into boxes because we have to use certain words and things to get the context and the concept across. So it's like this constant I feel like I'm reminding people through my page anyway that it's always shifting. If something's profound to me in this post in this moment, that's me in that moment sharing that because I've connected in that way. It's hard because if someone looks at that post 3 months later, they might feel that I'm still in that place and I still have that idea about that deity. But it's always shifting, as you've said, and the bumping of the ego is the necessary part of that process of realizing, oh crap, the identity is false in the first place, and I'm actually playing this wonderful game called life. And the more that we do put labels onto things and names onto things and expect and hold on to life, isn't it? That the magic can't flow through because we're holding on to things that we are making a reality.
Yeah, exactly. it's the futility of control, or the necessity of control, that is a futility. I often say, like, you look out your window, that person cuts their grass, that person cuts the grass, we cut our hair, we wash our cars, we try to make ourselves look as though time is not winning, that we have control over something that doesn't actually want control. It wants to, what we think is a chaos, it wants to resume. And it comes down to that idea of truth as well. In my practice, there is no such thing as true. There is what we know to be true now. And tomorrow, that may not be the case, but it is now. And so therefore, that's what we work on. But we always keep our eyes open to that it will change. It cannot be a definite truth. And by doing that, I've found so much less resistance within me in my practice. Like it's very true to what you're saying. Like I was doing a post about the four winds and calling in the four winds and stuff like this. And it was something that at the time for me was incredibly, and it was like, I want to share this with people. I want to share this kind of, because at the time it was kind of winter. It was still winter, but the wind blowing and hailing, and we had the storms coming in. I was like, this is actually fantastic. This is a really good opportunity, to do this. And yet, when you post things on social media, you forget that you're still that's still people still interact with it a month down the line. So you're still coming back to things where you've kind of like onto other things. So you always have to keep going back and catching up with different things with people, which I think is good, but it can become a bit overwhelming as well sometimes. which is quite.
Yeah, but it is fun to see the evolution of ourselves, isn't it? We look at, oh, someone's commented on a post that we shared like 6 months ago, and it's like, that's me.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's all me. Yeah, it's just it's there's a lot of at the moment with the full moon that we're in right now, there's for me a lot of synchronicities and I've really taken a step back and just allowed whatever needs to happen, release the control and so
yeah.
many synchronicities. And this is one right now. The authentic self is constantly changing. So you can never show someone your authentic self, especially on social media.
That's the thing. It's as I was saying, it's that thing where also like it is marketing. We are marketing ourselves. So therefore, you know, you can sit there and just go, right, this is what it's about. Do this, do that, do this. But you always want to make sure that it catches people's eye. It takes people on a journey as well.
Yes.
I think that's the thing is that people you can give people the information and they will go and find it out. But many people, it's for them, it's a 10-second thing, and so they that 10 seconds is their commodity. That's that. What am I going to get from this right now? So you have to kind of take them on this journey, show them what it is, because it's always been the same. When people are entertained, they learn like 5 times quicker than when they're not. So you're always trying to entertain people, keep them engaged, and then they learn and they come back because they learn. Whereas if you just kind of give them box standard, this is what you do, they're kind of like, oh, great, that's really good. And then they go off and it's oftentimes it can be forgotten and things like that. You're trying to make an impact in some way.
Yeah, and it's like allowing them to, and it's like we're giving people an invitation to join our story, and then for their stories are being created alongside our stories, and like just think about all of the people who do watch one of our videos, and then their days changed because they're inspired, or like the stories that we're sharing are changing their stories, and we want to change them for the better. We hope that people do come off of our videos and our page and they're like, I'm gonna get out and do the day better than I first thought I was, because with Magick like for me anyway, my intention is to just be more joyful and happy and loving, and for other people to also experience that. And then through that, it's like, okay, so that means aims and goals and results. That's where the magic comes in, is realizing that the results of as to what we want from life don't have to just come through the mundane ways.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so if actually let's talk a little bit about magic in itself. And this is a question that I'm gonna actually ask everyone on my podcast.
Okay.
So if you could share an experience that proves magic exists for you, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, proving something exists. I once went to my great aunt. My two aunts basically adopted me, and they were both practitioners. And I went to my great aunt. My great aunt was the matriarch of the family, always. Huge amounts of love and respect for her from throughout the family. And I said, I'm having trouble believing in magic lately. I was going for a bit of a rough patch. I was probably 15, 16. She just looked at me and went, do you believe in me? I went, yes, of course. She went, then that'll do it. That's all you need to know. You don't need to believe in magic. Just believe in what you know and what you love. I was like, okay then. My great aunt was a healer, and she was a profound healer. She was a wonderful woman. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. My mother was, what she have been then? I was 3 months premature, so what? 6 months pregnant. And she came in to see my aunt, who was on my father's side, and she said, "Can I?" And she was like, "Yes." And she touched her belly and went, "Something's wrong." And she went, "I'm fine." She went, "Something's wrong." She said, "There's two in there." And she went, "There's not two in there. There's one." She went, "No, there's two in there, but something's wrong. You need to go to hospital." She was like, "I'm fine." She said to my father, "You need to take us to the hospital now." Now, my father, growing up with around my great aunt, just if she told you to do something, you did it. That was it. So she said, "Come on, we're getting in the car." He said, "Go to the hospital." There are two. I had a twin brother, and he there was a problem. I was dying. He did not make it. I, however, 3 months premature, this big. They wrapped me up in tin foil. It's not tin foil, obviously, like a baked potato, but they wrapped me up in this stuff, and obviously, it was touch and go. And yet, if it wasn't for that woman, I wouldn't be here. And the same goes for my brother. Um, Her name was Jean, Auntie Jean. Always called her Auntie Jean. But um, every single person, like as a kid, growing up, they would be people lining up. Our front room was a waiting room, and there was a room where she would heal. Out the back, there was tinctures and plants and all manner of things drying. And my other aunt, who was technically, which is my second cousin, she's much older, obviously, than me, but she's passed a couple of years ago. But she was my other aunt, Aunt Sylve, and she was her adopted daughter. So there is this weird kind of generational adoption of the black sheep of the family almost comes into this fold. But she would offer readings. She was a very good clairvoyant, offer readings, and they would do their workings as well. But every day there would be people just coming in, waiting to be seen for healing. And me myself, the amount of times people say, we need to get you to the hospital, we need to get you a doctor. I would say no. I'd say, get me to Auntie Jean. Like every single person. One of them was my father. My father, he'd thrown his back out, and at the time, my biological parents, they had separated, and and his then girlfriend or fiance, I suppose at the time, said, "You don't," and he said, "I need to go see Auntie Jean." She went, "No, go to a chiropractor. Go to a chiropractor." Completely ruined his back. Completely ruined his back. Made it worse. He went to Auntie Jean, and Auntie Jean was not happy. She said, "Why didn't you come to me?" He said, "Well, she told me not to, Auntie Jean." And this is a fully grown man, kind of like this, well, she did. Yeah. And she fixed him. He walked out of there. He walked out of that room straight as a die. Walked out of that room. And so when I see this, all my life I've seen this, all manner of things, like blood stopping charms, even, just these things. I see them, and there is nothing else to describe what that woman was. Both of those women, but Magick. Yes. I would be in, like, there would be times I'd be in immense pain, and she would put her hand and she would close her eyes and she would mutter things, and all of a sudden this pulse of heat irradiates all over, just from where you, and all of a sudden, and it's so funny. Sometimes it's like I'd have a pain inside, like, and she'd say, and you'd give her your leg, like, and she's like, "It's not in the leg," and she'd grab your back or at the base of your spine or something like that, and all of a sudden things would move. You would literally feel things click or nerves kind of twang, and all of a sudden you were fine. And so to me, like, personally, that's when she said that to me, like, "Will you believe in me?" I knew exactly what she meant.
Yes.
It's I can't deny it. Proving to other people has never been an interest of mine.
No, it's that's why the question is proves to yourself, because it's funny, because at the beginning of the day I was drinking my coffee, looking out the window, and I was thinking about this question, and I was thinking about all the possible answers my guests on the podcast might have, and I just thought about mine, and I thought, well, birth, really, not mundane, but in terms of how common it is a normal thing that happens. And I was like, that's a really magical moment. And then I was thinking, but some people might talk about a fae experience that they've had or whatever. But I've got a feeling most people like yourself are going to come with something that is actually not a wildly out there thing to believe, but it is. If you look at just life itself, I was looking outside drinking my coffee, how can we not see the magic And
Yeah.
I was atheist growing up, but since I've actually seen the magic, I understand what um people mean by they can see God in everything. I think the difference between the witchcraft and the following a religion is that when we see the magic, we realize that we are entwined with it in a way that we are able to influence it and we are sovereign. And when you do that, you can heal the world. Like your auntie Jean, like she did so much good work for the people in the community and her family because she made those decisions. She didn't rely on an outside source. And I
Yeah.
think it's just such a wonderful answer. And yeah, because I was thinking about birth. The first
Yeah.
thing I thought about drinking my coffee in your story was that of your birth with your twin brother that didn't make it through to this
Yeah.
world right now in the same way that you have. But yeah, no, that's incredible.
Something tells me that me and my twin brother wouldn't have got on. We would have been like, something tells me now. I don't know if that's because he's around, but is this feeling of that we would constantly be kind of like, because I'm quite a stubborn person, and I think we would have been two stubborn entities constantly just bumping heads, you know. This is I sometimes think about and think that's a good thing. Perhaps that's that's one of the reasons. But I think it is the what we call the mundane, what we call the mundane. In truth, there is no such thing as mundane. There cannot be. Look
Yeah.
at life. Look at the just how remarkable it is. The simplest things, you know. I like growing plants. I love growing plants. I love anything that grows. But I've always found that to think, people explain it. It's science explains it. Great. But how can you still not look at that and think that's magic? I take, do I have one? No. But you take an acorn. Take an acorn. Get an acorn. I'm holding in my hand an acorn that has the potential. Think time is not of the essence. Doesn't matter. It's not about me. Just think of the time, limitless amount of time. This acorn has the potential to repopulate a whole country with a forest. Every single oak tree is a genetic copy from an original oak. Like that means they came from one specific oak at some point. Like what you hold in your hand is this small tiny thing you can put in your pocket. One day has the potential to become this great thing, tons of worth of timber and wood and growth and home to so many other life forms. And it can then spread from that. It doesn't simply just, how is that not magic? Like, it's remarkable. It's, just the very in awe of life itself.
Mm,
And I think it's that control as well. That point of what we were talking about, cutting your lawn, washing your car. The illusion that we are in control gives us comfort. And yet, I think that's why we also refer to things as being mundane, because otherwise we would be, when have you ever like stood out and looked at the ocean or been at the foot of a mountain and you realize, wow, I'm really small. Like I'm nothing. I'm literally just a feather floating about on the wind here. I'm at the mercy of so much. I think that everything in life reminds us of that. So we paint this mundane image on things. So we're not overwhelmed all the time by it. But I often tell people that in my practice, I found immense freedom and power from actually coming to terms with I'm not in control. I've never been in control. The difference is now is that I'm not going to pretend that I am. Um,
yeah, the wisest men know nothing, and
yeah,
it is the truest thing. I think the path of the mystic that we are on, we are having to remind ourselves that the unknown is okay, change is okay, and kind of treading on the edge of existential questions,
mm,
which we like to dive into.
yeah,
A lot of people don't. And I think this where it comes back to the witch on the edge of society.
yeah.
The questions we ask are frightening to people who
They are.
don't
They
like change.
yeah, they're uncomfortable ones. But yeah, there's
And
a
not
lot
all
of
of us have to get uncomfortable. Like I kind of see people, I've been recently seeing human beings like bees, and other animals where I do think some of us have certain roles.
yeah,
And the reason that society here is very, very skewed and all over the world is because we haven't looked at the individual roles that people naturally have, that the gifts that they naturally can bring. So you've got a bee colony, the queen bees doing something in particular, the worker bees are doing something, the soldier bees or the warrior bees or whatever they're called are doing something. But with humans, we're just kind of thrown into whatever it is. That I think, just like with bees, there are people whose role in society is to ask those questions and is to be connected to these other worlds. So then we can guide, like, surviving shamanic traditions. I'm really interested in, you've probably seen on my page, but the surviving traditions around the world, how we need to protect them, but then how us in our culture where we don't have that, how can we bring forward that wisdom when it's needed, which is what we're essentially doing on social media, and then accepting it's okay to use social media to do this, because social media is where everyone is chatting. It's like our council hall in a sense.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I completely agree. It is very like that sense of. I think the funny thing is that there will always be people who you could eradicate all memory of witchcraft throughout the world. You could just clear everything out of the way. I guarantee you, in 100 years' time, there will be people.
They failed.
They did exactly, but there would be people practicing witchcraft, and they would have no clue why they're doing it. Like the amount of people who come to witchcraft and be like, "Oh, I've done that for ages," like because it's something you cannot not do. You know what I mean? It's part of your very existence, your being, and that's wonderful. That's what's so powerful about it. It's witchcraft is a source of nature in a way. It's a power of nature, and it shows that time and time again. Because very much like, you get a city, you build a city. If you left the city, if everyone just buggered off and left that city, within about 6 months' time, you wouldn't even recognize it. Nature would reclaim it. You can't stop that, because it's, once again, the city is the idea, is the aspect of the illusion of control. But what actually is beneath it are all these little seeds and these roots that are just waiting for a chance to come up. And so, yeah, I find it fascinating. I really do, especially on social media, how people are now using this technology to come together. And of course it can create friction. Of course it does. There's many voices all trying to listen and speak, but from what comes from it, some fantastic stuff, and there's a lot of preservation going on as well, which is lovely. And I say to people that, in how I see it in witchcraft, is imagine that everything that you interact with in your life is a mirror, and then imagine that you are just a mirror also. So therefore, everything that you interact with reflects you, but you are also in control of what's being reflected back. So everything you interact with, there is, going back to what when we were talking about deities, it's the same thing. You have this, a deity can mean many things. There are many truths, and they're all technically true, and none of them are at the same time, depending on the person. So a deity can be something to you because of who you are. You are two mirrors bouncing off of each other, creating this kind of this scope, and that's basically what life is. It's this huge I say that, you're
the sound for the last sentence you had, you said basically what life is. I'll cut this little bit out, but it went silent.
Oh, sorry. Basically what life is this. I have this saying that, you are the universe. The universe, people wonder, like, is the universe a mass consciousness? I'm like, well, yeah, because you are in the universe. You're a consciousness within it, made from it. So you are the consciousness of the universe. So therefore, everything that you interact with is you. Everything that everything that you're not happy about is because you're not happy. It's not because it's made you unhappy. It's what you've chosen to see it as. It's become a prompt to tell you that you're not happy. And I think that's one of the things that social media has done. It's shown a lot of people that they're not happy with things. And that's not actually someone's fault, because instead what we're doing is we're showing people that don't follow me, don't do what I'm doing, but have the courage to do what you want to do.
Mm.
That's, I think that's one of the biggest problems with witchcraft, is that there are many, many books out there that tell you, no, this is how you do it. And that's the problem, because if as soon as you say to someone, this is how you do it, that becomes a religion. Do it my way, sort of thing. And it's this idea of step off the ledge, go outside your bubble, and just embrace what comes, see what comes to you, and make something of it, do something with it, and what you'll find out of the pieces that kind of you have is you'll find a resemblance of your own personal practice, an expression of your very spirit within this world, and how you interact with it. And from that, you use it to bring yourself joy, empowerment. And I think it's lovely to see, because it's becoming a much bigger thing now. And people are starting to notice that that's actually like the truth of what witchcraft is. It's not, it still happens. It still happens. You still get people who are, the amount of times people tell me I'm a warlock, and they're adamant in comments, but you're a warlock. I'm like, I'm not. I'm a witch. I mean, technically,
is a warlock what people call a male witch? Where does that word come from?
It comes from Old English, which is like voiluk, which means basically oath breaker or deceiver. It's it's not a nice term, and oftentimes within covens, the idea was that it was a practitioner who would infiltrate a coven and then basically break it up and try to get dominance within it. And so it wasn't a nice word, and it was often associated with men because of that reason as well.
I can see that. I can see why it is associated with men because of that reason. But yeah, no, I didn't know that that's where it came from. Oathbreaker is the opposite of what a witch is, because you've made an oath to surrender to the natural forces of the world. And it's very simple, actually, when it comes down to it. All these questions people have and all these books they want to read, and it's just really surrendering to the natural world and to ourselves, and through that surrender realizing that we can make more decisions because we are more free. And my something that influences my witchcraft practice massively, and this is something in witchcraft you'll always hear, you can be any religion and practice within witchcraft, but is Taoism. So I found Taoism and Buddhism before I found witchcraft. And it is that surrendering with the flow, and just surrender to the world and the universe. And it's hard. It is a discipline, which is where the witchcraft does come in, and where it is handy and useful to know certain rituals and to follow certain things, because that discipline, for some people, really needs to be there. And also what you were just saying about how how we are expressing ourselves through finding ourselves, our own unique practice. There is something that is common throughout all of us, which is that connection to nature. And it was funny because before we hit record, we noticed how our wallpapers are very similar. And people might think this is a witchcraft aesthetic. It's like, no, it's the sky. This is just the sky. It's got nothing to do with me, and it's just the sky. But it's funny that the witchcraft aesthetic is nature, and we're like, no, nature's nature. It doesn't have an aesthetic, It's it's funny.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the thing. It's amount of times people just describe this as a set. I love your set. They say, I'm like, this is my office. This is like, I know all these things, like for instance, the cauldron and stuff. It looks nice. It's actually, I use it. All these things I use. But I think that's the thing. But that's also a thing in social media. The idea of aesthetic has been labeled something that's actually bad. And I constantly say, like, there needs to be some aesthetic. There needs to be something, all of us, a lot of people are like purists in a way, and they're like, no. Everything has to be authentic, this or that. And I'm not one of those people. but I think that there is a sense of an expression. Your craft is an expression of you. So therefore, only naturally, what anything that entails your craft, for instance, my office where I work and where I practice, needs to express that as well, you know. And yet you can get a lot of judgment from people about things like that, you know, because they don't see it as as an authenticity. And I think that's not fair. It is, as we were saying in the way of social media. We use aesthetic in social media because it sets the scene. Some of the best books about witchcraft I've read, they don't just tell you this is what you do. They first take you on this journey. They paint a picture and express through creativity. Because in truth, to me, that's one of the most important things. Creativity.
Yes.
It's a way of our own spirit reaching out and touching other things. We do that through creativity, and so it's a huge part of practice for me. So that's always been my argument for aesthetic as well. You know, I feel that it is necessary to some degree. You know, but there are people out there who are just like, I don't care about that. But that's fine. It all depends on, you know, what works best for you. Sorry about the noise, by the way.
It's okay. It's all good. It is real life. That's what's going on. You know, we don't have these perfect quiet time. Yeah. Yeah, like with aesthetic, yeah, like with social media in particular, there are some things that you've got to fall into, and aesthetic is one of them, and it's beautiful and it's creative, and yeah, witchcraft is creative. It's realizing that we can be creative, and it brings back that child self. And if I think it's we all forget that as teenagers because we're in our own state of initiation into adulthood, and then we come back to it like, wow, I can be like really creative and I can use my imagination and myth, but not just by drawing something my whole life. And it's just it's so empowering. And yeah, we'll come to the end of this podcast now with that energy of imagination and empowerment for everybody. After this, where can people go if they'd like to find you? Do you have any projects or anything coming out this year? Is there anything you feel like you want to tell wizards?
I have you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, the Antlered Crown. I also have a website which is the Antlered Crown as well, .com, and there I do readings and as well, and other places. There's a shop there and there's stuff about me, but I also have a Patreon as well, and there we have like a Discord, we have book clubs, monthly meetings, and huge discussions within the Discord and stuff. But I'm currently trying to work on a book, but it's very difficult because I don't know if you can hear scores of children usually, and it's very difficult to get anything done. You know, so but when I get there eventually, I'm hoping to bring out a book, and so that's that.
Nice. Yeah, well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. And thanks everyone for listening. Please do pop any questions for either of us in the comment section of this video if you want to know more about something we've touched on that I'm not putting into the show notes. But yeah, thank you everybody, and awen.